Hey FMA family, it's Michelle, and I just wanted to read you a book today. If you see behind me, you'll see my husband's tent, the brown and tan tent, and my son's hammock between the two trees there, and he's got the tarp over it. This weekend, first weekend of May, was beautiful, like 70 degrees. And we are a scouting family, and so the Boy Scouts of North America decided that we should have a camp in. So having a great backyard, which we're so thankful for, and having the equipment and the weather, we decided to camp outside. So in honor of that, and I hope you can see me, if not, just enjoy the sound of the birds, my wind chimes, and listen to a good story. But the one I chose today, if you can see it, is called Arthur's Campout. It's by Lillian Hoban. And I know the weekend was beautiful, but it's actually quite chilly today on Tuesday. I'm all got my hat, my gloves, my blanket. But here we go. Are we ready? Chapter 1. It was spring vacation. Mother and father were away. The babysitter was sweeping the porch. Violet was in the yard, picking dandelions. Arthur was lying on the grass. Come look at this bug, said Violet. It looks like a twig. Gosh, if you remember on Insect Day, Monday, we were talking about those bugs that look like twigs. Remember? That's right, a walking stick. Those are so cool. It's a walking stick, said Arthur. We studied them in science. Arthur yawned and rolled over. I wish I had something to do. I will tell you what you can do, called the babysitter. You can clean up the yard. That's nothing to do, said Arthur. Yes, it is, said the babysitter. You can pick it up. All the broken branches and the twigs. I know we've spent quite a bit of time picking up sticks and twigs and leaves and walnuts and pine cones and chestnuts. All kinds of things going on in our yard. Because as you can see, we back up to the woods. But not my walking stick, Twig, said Violet. He will not know the difference, said Arthur. He might, said Violet. No, he won't, said Arthur. You never studied science, so you don't know. Just like all siblings, looks like they are arguing about that. Some difference of opinion. Do you hear my wind chimes? They're so peaceful. Yes, I did, said Violet. My teacher put some cocoons in glass jars. After a while, the moths came out. That's baby science, said Arthur. I mean real science. Like going on field trips and collecting specimens. How about collecting some trash specimens, said the babysitter. She gave Arthur a big trash bag. Phooey, said Arthur. Why can't I do something fun? Maybe picking up trash isn't exactly fun, but it is a good service that we can do for our earth. Arthur started to clean up the yard. He picked up branches and twigs. He picked up an old gum wrapper. He picked up a Cracker Jack box, and inside the box was a big black ant. It was carrying a piece of Cracker Jack. Look, Violet, said Arthur, here is a worker ant, just like we studied in science. Yeah, that's true. Ants are very hard workers. Violet looked at the ant. I thought you studied specimens, she said. "An ant is a specimen," said Arthur. "Our class goes on field trips to collect them." "Oh boy, I just got a great idea. I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to go on a field trip." Oh, field trips are lots of fun. I know kindergarten has had a great opportunity to go on many field trips this year. "Can I come too?" asked Violet. "No," said Arthur. "I want to collect frogs and worms and snakes, slimy things that you would not like." "A girl in my class brought in a snake she caught," said Violet. "It wasn't a bit slimy. I held it in my hand." "You did?" asked Arthur. "Yes," said Violet. How many of you would hold a snake in your hand? You'd have to be very careful. "Okay," said Arthur. "You can come on the field trip. Go get some glass jars with lids." All right. So there they are. Their goal is let's go on a field trip. So now we're at chapter 2. Wilma and her big sister Mabel came down the road. They had knapsacks and blanket rolls on their backs. Wilma's knapsack had pots and pans tied to it. Mabel's knapsack had water jugs tied to it. "Where are you going with all that stuff?" asked Arthur. "We're going on a camp out," said Wilma. Can you see them already geared up to go? I bet they put a lot of thought into the supplies that they might need. "We came to ask Violet to come with us," said Mabel. "Violet's going on a field trip with me," said Arthur. "When I was young, I used to go on field trips, said Mabel. "They're okay, but camping out is much more fun." See them friends talking to each other? There are a lot of birds chirping today. Just then, Violet came out with the glass jars. "We're going on a camp out." "In the woods behind your house," said Mabel. "We're going to build a fire and cook hot dogs and toast marshmallows and tell ghost stories and sing songs. Do you want to come?" "Can Arthur come too?" asked Violet. "Arthur's going on a field trip," said Mabel. "Aren't you, Arthur?" Excuse me. "Oh, I don't know," said Arthur. "Maybe I should go on your camp out. Then I could protect you in the woods at night." See the girls, and then see Arthur over here. So brave. He wants to protect them. "Huh?" said Mabel. "I'm in charge of this camp out. I don't need anyone to protect me. You're not even old enough to build a campfire. Come on, Violet, go get your knapsack and a blanket roll. We'll have lots of fun without Arthur." Oh dear. I wonder if he's starting to feel like Violet started to feel, the way that they're talking to each other. It's not very kind. "Who wants to go on a camp out with a bunch of girls?" said Arthur. "I'm going on a field trip to collect specimens, and maybe I will camp out overnight all by myself." Oh, well, I guess we'll see what happens in chapter 3. Arthur packed his pajamas and his toothbrush. He packed glass jars for specimens. Then he went to the kitchen for food. "My goodness," said the babysitter, "the woods behind the house will be full of campers tonight. Here are 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, a banana, an orange, and a thermos of milk. Come home if you get lonely." "I'm not afraid of being alone in the woods," said Arthur. Ooh, he's got a lot of great snacks for his camp out. Arthur went out to the yard. He climbed over the stone wall and followed the path into the woods. After a while, he came to a brook. Kerplash! A frog jumped into the brook. "Oh boy, my first specimen," said Arthur. Do you see? How many of you like to go out in the woods or out in the yard and look for specimens? Specimens are, I don't know, little animals, insects. You catch them, you look at them, you study them, and then you let them go. The frog hopped onto a stone. Arthur hopped after the frog. The stone was slippery, and Arthur slipped, splash, right into the water. Oh, and the frog hopped away. "Phooey," said Arthur. He climbed out of the brook. His clothes were wet, his knapsack was wet, and his blanket roll was wet. It was getting dark, and he tripped over the roots of a tree. Oh, did you hear that loud truck drive by? "I wish I had a flashlight," said Arthur, and then he saw a little glimmer, and another and another. "Lightning bugs," cried Arthur. "I will use them for light." He took out his glass jar and tried to catch one. It flew into a briar bush. Arthur dove in after it. Thorns tore his clothes, and prickers pricked his fingers. "Oh, yow," yelled Arthur, and he dropped the jar. He dug around under the bush till he felt something round and smooth. Wonder what it is. "I found it," cried Arthur, and he pulled it up. "A snake!" yelled Arthur. He dropped the snake and ran. Low-hanging branches slapped at Arthur's face. Vines tangled in the straps of his knapsack. Gosh, you think the snake was as scared as Arthur was? Arthur pulled off his knapsack. He held it in front of his face so he could run faster. Suddenly he heard whoosh. "Who's there?" called Arthur. Something swooped low over his head. Something zoomed past his nose. Then something squeaked near his ear. Oh goodness, what is Arthur feeling right now? Do you think he's a little bit scared? Chapter 4. If I can turn the page. There we go. After a while, Arthur stopped to catch his breath. It was very quiet. A pond shimmered in the moonlight. Arthur sat down at the edge of the pond. He was tired. He was wet. And he was hungry. "This is a good place to camp," said Arthur. "But now I don't have anything to camp with." Oh no. I wonder what he's gonna do. Now I bet he's a little sad. "I wish I had something to eat. Maybe if I go to sleep I won't know I'm hungry." Arthur made a little nest in some dry leaves. He was just nodding off when bzzz, a mosquito buzzed near his ear. Arthur slapped at the mosquito, and another one bit him on the nose. And then another mosquito bit his foot, and another one stung his hand. Oh, goodness. I don't think this is really what Arthur had in mind. "It's my wet clothes," said Arthur. "If I cover myself with leaves, they will not come after me." Arthur covered himself with leaves, and now all the mosquitoes buzzed around his head. Arthur tried to drive them off by twitching his nose. "Phooey," yelled Arthur. He got up, hopped around, slapping at the mosquitoes, and suddenly he stopped and sniffed. "Hot dogs," said Arthur. "I smell hot dogs." Oh, see his little bed of leaves and the mosquitoes? How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hot dogs are a good thing to have at a campfire. Arthur closed his eyes and sniffed some more. Oh, I'm so hungry. Arthur's stomach started to grumble. It grumbled so loudly he could hardly hear the singing that drifted across the pond. It's the girls at their camp out, said Arthur. Maybe I can sneak up, find part of a hot dog someone dropped. Arthur ran around to the other side of the pond. Well, got an idea. He is on a mission. Arthur snuck up to the girls. He crouched down in the shadows. The girls were sitting around the campfire. They were roasting hot dogs and singing. Here comes Mr. Fuzzy Bat, yo buzzy insects batter scat. Bats fly low and bats fly high, flitting through the nighttime sky. I just made up that tune. It worked. Oh, those are some of my favorite memories with my Girl Scouts, sitting along campfire, singing. Good times. Arthur's stomach grumbled. What was that? Asked Wilma. Arthur stumbled out of the shadows. Bats, he cried. Why are you singing about bats? A whole bunch of bats came after me and tried to bite me, and I lost my knapsack and all my camping stuff, and I don't have anything to eat, and I'm hungry. My goodness, Arthur, said Mabel. You do look like something came after you. Gosh, right when the sun is going down, the moon is shining, twilight time, we do see a lot of bats flying in our yard. It's pretty cool. There sure are a lot of bats at Old Woman Creek, too. They eat thousands of mosquitoes every night. They're really important to the world. It could not be bats, said Violet. Bats don't hurt you. Bats are good. Bats eat insects like mosquitoes. They spread pollen so more flowers will grow. How do you know? Asked Arthur. We learned about them in science, said Violet, and she gave Arthur a hot dog. I'm glad to see that they are sharing and being kind to one another. It's really important, especially when it's your siblings. Arthur and the girls toasted marshmallows and sang songs. Then they went to sleep. Arthur dreamed about bats, thin and fat bats, small and tall bats. They were all friendly. In the morning, Arthur said, I dreamed about bats. They told me where to find my knapsack. See the bats? It's funny that he dreamt about them. A lot of times when we go to bed, we may dream about what we were thinking about. You know, once our family had a bat in the house, and that was crazy. All we had to do, we were chasing it with nets and yelling. All we had to do was turn the light off, open the door, and guess what? It flew right out. We didn't want to harm it. We just did not want it in our house. Arthur did find his knapsack. It was where the bats said it would be. They're smart bats. When the campers came home, there was a big sign over the porch that said, Welcome home, campers. The babysitter made stacks of pancakes with lots of syrup for breakfast. Yum, I just love pancakes. And I love homemade maple syrup from the maple tree. Arthur and Violet and Wilma and Mabel sat on the porch under the sign and ate them all up. Do you see all the friends? There are 4 friends, and they each have 3 pancakes on their plates. How many pancakes are there? 4 friends, 3 pancakes each. So we got 3 plus 3 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 plus 3, that's right, 12. 12 pancakes, or a dozen. Well, I hope you all really liked that book. I hope you could see it. I hope you enjoyed being outside. I am ready to go inside and make some hot tea. All right. So, another thing, when the weather is warm or when you're able, you and your family should pitch a tent or a hammock or get your sleeping bags and spend the night outside. Enjoy camping!